The landscape of modern media has undergone a profound and irreversible transformation over the last decade, shifting away from traditional television broadcasts and legacy print journalism toward decentralized, long-form digital audio platforms. At the absolute apex of this cultural and technological revolution sits the concept of the independent podcast, a medium that has granted single voices the unprecedented ability to reach, influence, and command the attention of tens of millions of listeners across the globe on a daily basis. For many years, this shift was celebrated as a democratization of information, a digital frontier where conversations could flow freely without the rigid constraints of network executives, advertising censors, or editorial gatekeepers. However, as these digital audio networks grew larger, attracting billions of dollars in corporate sponsorships and exclusive licensing agreements, a quiet tension began to brew beneath the surface of the internet. A fundamental conflict between the absolute freedom of speech and the corporate responsibility of the massive tech conglomerates that distribute these voices. This tension remained largely theoretical, debated in academic circles and tech boardrooms, until a perfect storm of global events, cultural polarization, and high-profile personalities collided to ignite one of the most explosive controversies in the history of modern entertainment. A crisis that would pit legendary rock musicians, international royalty, and millions of passionate digital consumers directly against the most powerful streaming platform on Earth and its most valuable, controversial star. To truly understand how this unprecedented battle line was drawn, one must first look at the sheer scale of the platform that found itself at the center of the storm, an algorithmic giant that fundamentally redefined how humanity consumes music and audio content. What began as a small Scandinavian tech startup designed to combat digital piracy eventually transformed into a global monopoly, a streaming titan hosting countless tracks and millions of individual podcast titles. As the competition for digital dominance intensified among Silicon Valley giants, this specific platform made a strategic multi-million-dollar gamble to pivot heavily into exclusive spoken word content, recognizing that while music licensing required continuous payouts to record labels, owning the exclusive rights to the world's most popular individual broadcasters would provide unparalleled cultural leverage and subscriber loyalty. This corporate strategy culminated in a series of historic, eye-watering financial deals that permanently altered the media landscape, effectively transforming the platform from a neutral tech utility into an influential publisher with a massive financial stake in the words spoken behind the microphone. By anchoring its future growth to a select few hyper-popular creators, the streaming service inadvertently bound its own corporate reputation, stock market valuation, and global standing to the unpredictable, unscripted, and fiercely independent nature of individual personalities who had built their massive audiences by explicitly rejecting corporate oversight and mainstream media norms. At the very heart of this brewing storm was a single broadcaster whose rise to global prominence is nothing short of extraordinary. A man who transitioned from the world of stand-up comedy and television hosting to become arguably the most influential interviewer of the 21st century. His program, characterized by unedited, multi-hour conversations that wander casually through topics ranging from martial arts and comedy to complex scientific theories, philosophy, and fringe alternative histories, had cultivated a deeply loyal and massive global audience that eclipsed the viewership of major cable news networks combined. Listeners were drawn to what they perceived as raw authenticity, an open-minded willingness to ask unconventional questions, and a refusal to adhere to the polished, carefully manicured scripts of mainstream journalism. Before we dive deeper into how this specific broadcasting philosophy triggered a massive international boycott, if you want to stay informed on the shifting dynamics of modern media, culture, and high-stakes entertainment news, please take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. As this host's influence expanded into the tens of millions of listeners per episode, the content of these freewheeling, unstructured discussions began to attract intense scrutiny from external observers, traditional journalists. and medical professionals who argued that in an era dominated by a prolonged global public health crisis, the propagation of unverified claims, alternative medical hypotheses, and highly controversial scientific opinions on a platform of this magnitude carried profound, real-world consequences that could not be easily ignored or dismissed as mere entertainment. The mounting frustration within the scientific and medical communities quickly began to bleed into the wider cultural zeitgeist, capturing the attention of prominent public figures, veteran artists, and social activists who felt that the streaming giant's passivity amounted to a tacit endorsement of dangerous rhetoric. The tension reached a critical tipping point when a legendary, fiercely independent rock musician, known throughout his decades-long career for his uncompromising political activism and environmental advocacy, decided that he could no longer allow his extensive, historic catalog of music to coexist on a platform that he believed was actively contributing to a public health crisis by distributing unverified medical narratives. In a sudden and dramatic public declaration that sent shockwaves through the entire entertainment industry, this iconic artist issued a stark, uncompromising ultimatum to the streaming platform, demanding the immediate removal of his music if they continued to host and profit from the controversial podcast. This bold move was not merely a symbolic gesture, it was a direct financial and moral challenge to the corporate structure of the streaming service, forcing the executive leadership to make an agonizingly difficult choice between defending their most expensive, high-profile exclusive content creator or preserving their relationship with one of the most respected and influential musical catalogs in rock history. This solitary act of defiance quickly acted as a catalyst, breaking the dam of public discourse and triggering a massive, cascading wave of solidarity across the entertainment world as other prominent artists and public figures began to re-examine their own relationships with the streaming platform. Within days, another legendary singer-songwriter, celebrated globally for her poetic lyricism and profound cultural impact, stepped forward to publicly support her peer, announcing that she too would withdraw her timeless musical library from the service in a unified stance against the perceived spread of public health misinformation. The movement rapidly evolved from an isolated dispute between an aging rock star and a tech company into a full-blown cultural phenomenon and a coordinated digital boycott, as a rapidly growing chorus of social media users, prominent influencers, and everyday subscribers began rallying under viral online campaigns urging millions of people around the world to permanently cancel their premium subscriptions. This rapidly escalating corporate nightmare was further compounded when an internationally renowned royal couple, who had recently relocated to the United States to establish their own multimedia production empire and had signed their own highly publicized, exclusive multi-million-dollar podcasting deal with the exact same streaming platform, chose this precise, high-tension moment to break their silence and enter the fray, dramatically elevating the stakes of the controversy and ensuring that the eyes of the entire global media apparatus were fixed squarely on the unfolding crisis. The unexpected intervention of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex added an entirely new, highly complex layer of geopolitical and cultural significance to an already volatile corporate crisis, transforming a localized dispute within the music industry into an international media sensation that captured headlines across the globe. Having famously stepped away from their official duties within the British royal family to pursue financial independence and creative freedom in the United States, the royal couple had positioned themselves as prominent global advocates for social justice, mental health awareness, and digital safety, frequently speaking out against the structural dangers of online harassment and the systematic spread of false information on internet platforms. Their decision to partner exclusively with this specific streaming titan in late 2020 through their own newly established production company, Archewell Audio, was heralded at the time as a monumental victory for the platform, cementing its status as a premium home for prestigious, high-minded global storytelling. However, this lucrative alliance meant that when the platform became embroiled in a fierce public controversy over the distribution of controversial medical narratives, The Duke and Duchess found their brand directly linked to a service facing intense public condemnation from the very scientific and cultural communities they consistently championed. As the viral boycott gathered momentum and public pressure mounted, the royal couple released a formal, carefully calibrated statement that sent immediate shockwaves through the executive boardrooms of the entertainment world, revealing that their concerns regarding the streaming service's content policies were neither sudden nor reactionary. In their public address, they explicitly disclosed that, as early as April of the previous year, during the height of the global health crisis, they had begun actively expressing deep apprehensions to their corporate partners at the platform regarding what they described as the all-too-real, devastating consequences of health-related misinformation being disseminated to millions of unsuspecting listeners daily. By making these historical, behind-the-scenes discussions public, the Duke and Duchess effectively demonstrated that the platform's leadership had been warned about these systemic editorial vulnerabilities long before the high-profile music boycott initiated by veteran rock icons had even begun. Despite their profound concerns, the couple did not immediately terminate their historic multi-million-dollar contract, choosing instead to adopt a diplomatic yet firm posture, publicly stating that they look to the streaming giant to courageously meet this critical cultural moment and emphasizing that they remained fully committed to continuing their collaborative production work together only as long as the platform took immediate, meaningful steps to address this public health crisis. The rapid convergence of legendary musical icons, millions of outraged digital subscribers, and high-profile international royalty created an unprecedented financial and reputational emergency for the streaming service, causing its stock price to experience sharp fluctuations as investors panicked over the potential long-term damage to the brand's global market dominance. For days, the tech giant remained locked in intense, closed-door emergency meetings, desperately trying to formulate a strategic corporate response that would appease its prestigious content creators and the public without alienating its most lucrative, hyper-popular, exclusive podcast host, whose fiercely loyal audience represented a massive cornerstone of the platform's daily user engagement. The silence from the company's executive leadership was finally broken when the chief executive officer issued a comprehensive public statement outlining a sweeping, platform-wide initiative designed to restore trust, enhance transparency, and implement robust content guardrails without resorting to direct censorship or the outright cancellation of controversial programs. The cornerstone of this new corporate policy was the immediate introduction of comprehensive, clearly visible content advisories to be permanently affixed to any and all podcast episodes across the entire network that featured open, unscripted discussions regarding the global health crisis or the efficacy of medical interventions, according to the official corporate guidelines. These newly implemented digital advisories were engineered to seamlessly redirect curious or concerned listeners away from the unverified claims made during informal audio interviews and guide them directly toward a dedicated, meticulously curated global health resource hub. This specialized digital page contained a wealth of verified, evidence-based data, up-to-date scientific analyses, and direct links to established global health authorities, medical research institutions, and certified public health officials, thereby ensuring that consumers had immediate, frictionless access to accurate information while preserving the platform's core commitment to hosting a diverse array of independent voices. This unprecedented policy shift marked a historic turning point in the evolution of the tech conglomerate, representing a public acknowledgement that it could no longer operate purely as a passive, neutral utility provider, but must instead accept its undeniable role as a highly influential global media publisher with a profound ethical obligation to safeguard its massive audiences from potentially harmful narrative distortion during a prolonged international crisis, with the streaming platform having officially signaled its new regulatory stance. The intense glare of the global media spotlight shifted directly back to the catalyst of the entire controversy, the immensely popular broadcaster himself. As millions of critics and supporters waited with bated breath to see how the famously uncompromising independent interviewer would react to this immense corporate and cultural pushback. Late in the evening, breaking his silence through a raw, unedited video message recorded and uploaded directly to his personal social media accounts, the host chose to address the swirling controversy with a surprising level of humility, introspection, and measured composure that caught many of his most ardent detractors completely off guard. Sitting before a simple backdrop, completely devoid of the slick production value or theatrical bravado often associated with high-stakes celebrity apologies, he spoke directly to his audience, explicitly stating that he was not actively trying to promote dangerous misinformation. Nor was he ever intentionally seeking to court global controversy or sow societal division through his work. Instead, he earnestly defended the foundational ethos of his long-running digital program, passionately arguing that he had never approached his interviews with a hidden political agenda or a desire to mislead the public, but had simply spent over a decade using the unique medium of long-form podcasting to engage in spontaneous, open-ended conversations with fascinating individuals, exploring complex ideas through organic dialogue, driven by genuine curiosity. While firmly defending the intrinsic value of open discussion, the host explicitly acknowledged the immense, unprecedented responsibility that accompanied commanding a digital megaphone that reached a larger monthly audience than almost any traditional television network on Earth. In a direct concession to the widespread criticisms leveled against him by the medical community and public figures alike, he pledged to implement immediate, concrete changes to his broad editorial approach, promising his audience that he would do his absolute best in all future episodes to ensure that he had thoroughly researched the complex scientific and sociological topics pertaining to global health crises long before discussing them on air. Furthermore, he committed to trying much harder in the future to consistently invite highly qualified experts with widely differing opinions, mainstream scientific consensus perspectives, and opposing viewpoints onto his program immediately following any controversial guests, thereby allowing his multi-million member audience to hear a completely balanced, comprehensive, and multifaceted presentation of complex modern issues. This highly anticipated public address represented an intriguing, critical tactical retreat, signaling that even the world's most successful independent content creator understood that the rapidly shifting realities of the modern digital ecosystem required a delicate, ongoing balance between the preservation of absolute creative independence and the sober acknowledgement of widespread social impact. The introspective response from the world's most successful podcaster, coupled with the streaming platform's rapid deployment of digital content advisories, marked the conclusion of the immediate corporate crisis. Yet, the long-term ramifications of this unprecedented cultural showdown continued to reverberate across the global entertainment landscape for years to come. This intense confrontation effectively shattered the long-held illusion that major Silicon Valley tech companies could remain neutral, hands-off intermediaries while simultaneously generating billions of dollars in profit from exclusive, highly influential intellectual property. By forcing a tech giant to implement structural editorial guardrails and prompting an independent creator to publicly commit to a more balanced casting strategy, the unified front formed by veteran musicians, millions of dedicated digital consumers, and international royalty established a powerful new precedent for public accountability in the digital age. This historic event demonstrated that the collective voice of a distributed online audience, when amplified by highly respected public figures, possesses the undeniable economic leverage required to challenge corporate monopolies and reshape the policies of the world's most powerful media distribution networks. To fully understand the profound significance of this cultural turning point, it is essential to examine the diverse biographies and distinct motivations of the primary participants who found themselves thrust into the center of this modern ideological battleground. The legendary rock musician who initiated the historic boycott had spent more than 5 decades establishing a reputation as a fiercely independent, uncompromising creative force whose art was inextricably linked to deep social, environmental, and humanitarian advocacy. Born in Canada before rising to global prominence during the turbulent counterculture movement of the late 1960s, this iconic singer-songwriter consistently used his distinct voice and raw guitar style to challenge institutional power, corporate greed, and political corruption. Throughout his storied career, which included induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, both as a solo artist and as a member of a legendary folk rock supergroup, he repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to sacrifice commercial gain and alienate corporate partners in defense of his core principles. His decision to pull his entire musical catalog from the streaming platform was not an isolated act of impulsive anger, but rather the logical continuation of a lifelong philosophical commitment to utilizing his creative leverage as a weapon against what he perceived as systemic threats to public safety and societal well-being. In a beautiful display of artistic solidarity, the fellow singer-songwriter, who immediately followed him into the boycott, brought an equal measure of historical prestige and cultural weight to the burgeoning digital protest movement. Emerging from the same vibrant mid-20th century folk music scene, she had long been celebrated as one of the most gifted, influential, and poetic lyricists of her generation, creating timeless albums that fundamentally redefined the structural possibilities of popular songwriting. Her music, which seamlessly blended elements of folk, jazz, and pop, served as the emotional soundtrack for generations of listeners, earning her numerous accolades, including multiple Grammy Awards and a permanent place among the greatest musical artists of all time. Having survived a debilitating childhood battle with polio long before the widespread availability of modern medical interventions, her deeply personal understanding of infectious disease and public health naturally fueled her passionate stance against the dissemination of unverified medical claims. By choosing to withdraw her priceless historic master recordings from the streaming service, she reinforced the moral gravity of the boycott, transforming a standard corporate dispute into a profound intergenerational stand for scientific truth and collective social responsibility. Simultaneously, the involvement of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex introduced an entirely different dimension of global prestige, celebrity influence, and institutional scrutiny to the unfolding drama, highlighting the complex intersection of modern royalty and digital media production. Following their highly publicized departure from the traditional constraints of the British monarchy, the couple embarked on a deliberate mission to build a progressive, independent multimedia empire based in California, designed to champion critical societal issues through authentic, high-impact storytelling. The Duke, drawing from a lifetime of intense global media scrutiny and profound personal tragedy, had dedicated much of his adult life to advancing mental health awareness, supporting wounded veterans through the creation of the International Invictus Games, and combating the systemic spread of digital harassment and online radicalization. The Duchess, a successful American actress who had transitioned into a global humanitarian advocate and a prominent voice for gender equality and racial justice, brought a sharp understanding of modern media dynamics and branding to their shared philanthropic endeavors. Their exclusive partnership with the streaming giant via their production company was intended to provide a powerful global platform for uplifting, socially conscious audio content, making their public criticism of the platform's editorial policies a highly significant, high-stakes gamble that risked fracturing a key pillar of their new commercial infrastructure in defense of public health integrity, in stark contrast to the traditional prestige of legendary rock stars and international royalty. The billionaire broadcaster at the center of the storm represented a completely self-made, unconventional archetype of modern cultural influence, whose rapid ascent to global prominence bypassed every traditional media gatekeeper. Emerging from a background in competitive martial arts and stand-up comedy, he initially gained widespread public recognition as a television host for high-intensity reality shows, and as a highly respected color commentator for the world's premier mixed martial arts organization. When he launched his independent audio program in late 2009, it was a rudimentary, unscripted experiment conducted in a small room with fellow comedians, completely devoid of corporate backing or formal editorial structure. Over the course of more than a decade and thousands of unedited multi-hour episodes, his casual, hyper-curious interviewing style resonated deeply with a massive, primarily young audience that had grown increasingly weary of the polished, hyper-partisan, and heavily edited formats of mainstream cable news. His unique ability to converse comfortably with an incredibly diverse array of guests, ranging from elite athletes and Hollywood celebrities to controversial political theorists, theoretical physicists, and fringe alternative historians, transformed his show into a global cultural phenomenon, eventually securing a record-breaking exclusive licensing agreement that solidified his position as the undisputed king of the digital audio frontier. Ultimately, this explosive controversy served as a powerful, enduring reminder of the critical importance of reliable, evidence-based scientific communication during periods of profound global uncertainty and public health crises. In an increasingly fragmented digital media landscape where algorithms are explicitly engineered to maximize user engagement by amplifying sensationalism, conflict, and contrarian narratives, the line between harmless alternative speculation and potentially hazardous misinformation has become perilously thin. Major global health institutions, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the World Health Organization, have consistently maintained that accessible, transparent, and accurate public communication remains the single most effective tool for protecting communities from serious illness and preventing the collapse of medical infrastructure. The high-stakes showdown between a tech monopoly, iconic artists, royal producers, and a hyper-popular independent broadcaster demonstrated that in the 21st century, the responsibility for maintaining the integrity of public discourse can no longer be delegated solely to individual creators or corporate executives. It is a continuous, collective obligation that requires active vigilance from platform distributors, content creators, and everyday digital consumers alike, ensuring